I'm Jim Check. With me, Ian Burns, out there in the nation's capital. I'm here in Kelowna. Kind of a cloudy, socked-in day, but no snow on the ground here. I imagine you have a little bit of the white powder over there. I don't think we have your sound. What's going on there? Ian, no audio. Yeah, we got you now. There you go. We're trying out a new camera. Ian's got a new camera. We got a new mics. So, hey, man, we got a really big show.
We got a lot of snow here.
Got a lot of snow. Let's hit the headlines first, and then we'll get into some stuff. Trump. Wow. Trump threatens Carney on China deal. Carney adds to EV chaos. Is something about to happen in Iran? And after tough talk at WEF, Carney tries to sell calmness. Parliament returns after that big break. They're working so hard. More crumbs being doled out as record food bank usage soars. Election upcoming. Is Mark Carney's New World Order, is that the one that's collapsing? Auto dealers warn of dire consequences. Freeland resurfaces. Construction industry craters in Ontario. Media access so different that it really highlights what is the real threat to democracy. Separatism gaining momentum. Vax objector gets back pay. Fed's fraud tip lights up. And metals on fire. Carney adds to BC DRIPA uncertainty. Administration eating at doctor's time in BC, and Minneapolis like a war zone. Crazy. All that and a lot more on the really big show. But we want to say thanks. Like one of the big things is the traffic over the past 30 days now, 1.2, the other one there, 1.25 million views. I can't really see it, but 1.25 million views. Thank you to everybody that's a regular here and that's new and that's coming. We really appreciate this. It's really getting out to a much larger audience. So we really, really, really appreciate that. And then just in the last couple of days, 260,000 views. So again, really appreciative here at the Really Big Show. Really, really appreciate everybody that comes, especially the people that come on a regular basis. We really appreciate everything that you've been doing to help us get the word out. And then just some of the comments that are saying they absolutely love your media takes in the world, love listening to you tell us truth. And then from the CCRF, FR says thanks for the coverage. Lots of really good comments there. And of course, with that, there always is one person that says, you creeps have zero credibility. Go find a real job. That's not very nice, is it?
That looks like a text message. Who's been texting you?
I think that actually came from our TikTok there, on our TikTok account.
Okay. Creeps.
And then just a lot of people actually making contributions there, and a lot of people there actually helping us get some sausage rolls. So we really appreciate all that as well. Just a long list of people that have made contributions there. So appreciated very much everybody that makes a contribution to independent journalism here on the Really Big Show. We are so appreciative, and again, really appreciative of everything. And we love the comments, and it's kind of like a little bit of a family growing here, especially the ones that come back on a regular basis. And I think a lot of them are getting to know each other as well, which is great. Appreciate that. And we don't want to be just talking at you. We want to be conversing with you as well. So the big story, though, Trump, after Mark Carney's speech in Davos, then you said it. You called it there right away. He said, oh, yeah, if he wants to make a deal, he should make a deal. And then sure enough, a couple of days later, he says, if Canada makes a deal with China, you'll be immediately hit with a 100% tariff. So obviously the people in the back room there taking a look at it and then gave him a different talking point there. So, and he actually got really aggressive in some of his stuff there. And even he went back to his Justin Trudeau days and called Mark Carney Governor Canada. And he said, Governor Carney is going to make Canada a drop-off point for Chinese goods. He's got another thing coming, really. And yeah, so lots of reaction on that. And then Mark Carney kind of disappeared in the background for a few days. You couldn't hear from him. Nobody was getting any interviews, no reaction, nothing. And but Trump putting out like pictures. I think there was a picture of the Canada and the United States as I think one solid United States. American president said China is successfully and completely taking over the great country of Canada. So sad to see it happen. Trump also said Canada is systematically destroying itself and damned Mark Carney, deal with China's disaster. Confusingly, however, the president also said the government of Carney is a sorely mistake to see that Canada can build a closer relationship with China, warning 100% tariffs on Canadian products heading into the U.S. should that happen. The last thing the world needs is for China to take over Canada. I mean, you and I talked about that too. It's like, I mean, they're not going to stand for Canada being too cozy with China.
No, I mean, they wrote it down. This is not special insight. You can read the PDF, the National Security Strategy document. They spelled all this out, which is what made it all the weirder that Trump reacted the way that he did when he said, if they could do that, they should do that. They should get a deal. I mean, immediately I was like suspicious of that. And yet, apparently, Francois-Philippe Champagne, he wasn't suspicious, and a couple of others who came out and said, as the president says, if you can get a deal, you should get a deal with China. And I was thinking, I don't think you should say that, man. Like, don't bank on that. Like, he's going to change his mind. There's a very, very high chance of that. And lo and behold, that's exactly what he's done.
You nailed that on Friday. And I mean, it was expected. I mean, it doesn't make any sense at all that Canada, with all the stuff they're doing in Greenland there with China and Russia, and then all of a sudden to say, it's fine if you just cozy up to China for Canada there. But also back in business. So the Liberals are back in Parliament after that grueling work schedule, right? So they've had another 6-week vacation with only 7 months off in the whole of 2025. Imagine that in your job if you only had 7 months off of the year, eh? So
it's hard to imagine how they do it. These are the real heroes of Canadian society, aren't they? You just got to think about how difficult that must be.
And they're getting a raise in April too. Their starting salary is about 5 times that of the soldiers expect to kill and die for the countries in the likes of Afghanistan are back at their relentless toil. Yeah. So they're back at work, and Mark Carney and Liberals have lost young people, and they had that cabinet meeting there in Quebec there. And sure enough, when he came out, he had in tow with him a bunch of young people here. Let's listen to this first clip here from Mark Carney. As I think this is one of his first appearances since the big speech in Davos there.
How are you responding to Trump's threats about 100% tariffs?
Well, the first thing is that Canada respects our engagements, our commitments. Il y a des engagements dans l'ACM. We have commitments under CUSMA that not to pursue free trade agreements with non-market economies without prior notification. We have no intention of doing that with China or any other non-market economy. What we've done with China is to rectify some issues that developed in the last couple of years. In many respects, we're going to use the expression back to the future with respect to EVs, with respect to agriculture, with respect to fish products and other food products, but with additional protections. So for example, back in 2023, we didn't have a cap on the number of EVs. We didn't have a requirement for a large proportion of those EVs to be affordable, highly affordable EVs for Canadians. So it's entirely consistent with CUSMA, with our obligations, which we very much respect under CUSMA, and will continue to work that way forward.
Sur l'abordabilité, affordability, vos actions et vos propos. Your actions and recent statements seem to have angered Donald Trump, who now calls you governor, who says we'll have 100% tariffs on Canada. How will this make the task? Didn't you just mortgage Canadian affordability by standing up to Americans? No. First point. And as for affordability, the impact of American tariffs, well, it'll be on American affordability, not Canadian affordability. With Canadian affordability, we are protecting the social nets, dental care, child care, national food program for school. There are many. We have already reduced income taxes, and there will be other measures.
That's good. I think they got to get their story straight, because we just did the interview on Friday from the Liberal MP, said that China's going to start manufacturing cars in Canada. We can expect jobs from manufacturing plants here. Now we're going to say, well, no, it's only going to be 49,000 cars. And then just like, which story is which story? Like, where are we going here? Like, and now, remember when they put on all the tariffs, elbows up, we're going to nail the Americans back with tariffs. Now they recognize that tariffs, if we put tariffs on, it hurts the affordability for Canadians.
Well, he said no. He said it would hurt the affordability for Americans. So it really was back to the future, wasn't it? It was back in history where that was what we were being told by Justin Trudeau and Chrystia Freeland, and then Mark Carney for a little bit, and indeed Pierre Poilievre. Let's not forget him. Wanted to put tariffs on.
This EV thing is absolutely, like, they have no story straight on this. You know, like the other with Vasi Kapelis, when they interviewed that Liberal MP, saying that, you know, like it's going to bring jobs because they're going to start manufacturing here. And he's saying, oh, it's just a few cars, you know. Anyway, we're going to have more on the auto sector in a bit here.
I'd also say his defense, his primary defense, the main thrust of his defense from Mark Carney is, you know, guys, fellas, we're just going back to before Justin Trudeau and Chrystia Freeland put this tariff on in solidarity with Joe Biden and, you know, the American trade policy, though that's not really mentioned so much. But he's saying, we're just going back like a couple of years, guys. Like, no harm done. Obviously, what's being left out there, the main comment I think that needs to be made there is that we're not in that era anymore. It isn't a few years ago. It's not 2022, 2023, 2024, whatever. It's 2026. And things have really changed. So you can't just rely on that as a defense. Like, oh, we've just gone back to the way it was. Not quite. No, you've gone back to the way it was at a time where it's unforgivable to go back to the way it was. Or at the very least, provocative. And surprise, surprise, he's provoked the Americans.
Yeah, and we'll have
John Gotti, thanks for that.
There you go. One of the things they dropped today, though, because we're going to see some news about food bank usage at record levels, is they dropped a similar program to Justin Trudeau. So we're going to play this clip here with Justin Trudeau first, and then Mark Carney dropping the new GST, the increase in the GST rebate.
That's why we created the new grocery rebate, which will allow an eligible couple with 2 children to receive up to $467. This is a measure that will help make life more affordable for around 11 million individuals and families.
So today we're announcing that our government is launching the new Canada's Groceries and Essentials benefit. This will deliver hundreds of dollars more into the bank accounts of more than 12 million Canadians.
So same grocery store, it looks like, too. Same thing, same, just rinse, repeat, do the same thing. And that 25% hike to the GST credit, they've renamed that now to the Canada Groceries and Essentials benefit. Canada having the highest inflation in the G7 at 6.2%, more than double what the Americans are facing right now. In part of the efforts to make life more affordable, the Prime Minister also said that the government will spend $500 million to help firms address the costs of supply chain disruptions, $150 million to create another entity called the Food Security Group, $20 million to support food banks. Drop the industrial carbon tax. That'll help everybody. I mean, we've got to be one of the last few nations out there that are still pushing this industrial carbon tax. Because I mean,
or just taxes on food in general. They like to pretend that there aren't taxes on food. There is tax on food. Sausage rolls, for example, are taxed.
Yeah, and then so 25%. I mean, it'll amount to a couple $100 more. This is the chart that is up there right now, but. Once you make over $55,000 a year or $50,000 a year, it basically amounts to nothing, right? Like you get nothing. So this is, for some people, and that tax break that he talks about for the people in that tax bracket, they get $11 in that tax break. So, I mean, we have the highest food, and we need to tackle the rising cost of food. We need to remove the industrial carbon tax, again, sprinkling out crumbs. And here's some reaction on X from some people on it again, like saying this doesn't help middle class. This doesn't, only eligible to people already eligible for GST credit. you can read some of the comments, and like a lot of people frustrated again with this, right? So,
but it's also more evidence, I think, that there's going to be an election.
yeah.
Well, there's very high likelihood that there's going to be an election quite soon, because here we have the master, the emperor, coming into the Colosseum and throwing loaves of bread at the peasants. That's often a sign that something is going to go down. He's going to ask you for something. So,
I mean, they seem to be using this GST thing quite a bit. It's like Trudeau and Freeland used it too. Remember the taco and tinsel GST removal there at Christmas, and they seem to want to tinker with the GST a little bit. But it doesn't amount to much for most people. Again, that one didn't amount to much for most people either, and that's the thing. Carney also talking about, like the job creation stuff. We're going to play another clip here on Carney speaking there at the grocery store, and CBC doing their work there, laying it out for him.
Morning, Prime Minister. Mike with CTV News. I just wanted to follow up on what Tom was asking. Are you offended by being called governor?
I mean, I think in this role, you get called a lot of things, a lot of time, and I'm not going to comment on every tweet or truth or comment from whoever. So I can handle it.
As a follow-up,
but I do think this point about our troops is fundamental, and respecting our troops and the contribution that they've made.
I want to follow up on what you were saying yesterday outside of cabinet or caucus. You said that Canada isn't pursuing a free trade agreement with China. What efforts are you or your ministers making with the Trump administration to communicate that to them so that those threats of tariffs stop?
Well, I interpreted the president's comments exactly that way, which is looking forward to were we pursuing a deeper free trade agreement. We've made it clear. My fellow members of cabinet, ministers, have made it clear to their counterparts that that's the case. We've made the public point. And it's obvious. Look, Canada, when we sign an agreement, we sign a trade agreement, in this case, USMCA, as they call it, or CUSMA, as we call it. There is a clause in that agreement, Article 32.10, I believe, which says that you will not have, you have to give notice, in effect, if you're pursuing a free trade agreement with a, quote, non-market economy. That's in the eye of the beholder who defines it, but it's a definition of any of the other parties who see somebody as a non-market economy. China is one of 15 or 17 economies that the U.S. views as non-market. I can understand why they say that. So we got an agreement. If we were even considering that, which we are not and never have, we would have given notice, and then there's a very open and transparent process. Thank you.
I can understand that. I can understand why the Americans might think that China is a non-market economy. From, the wizard of economics himself. Apparently Mark Carney, as well as many other faux pas, like thinking that Canada plus the Scandinavian countries represent 20% of world GDP. He also seems to have a hard time recognizing whatever China is, whatever economic system that is, or recognizing that it isn't a market economy, which is obvious to the squirrels in the trees. It's the most obvious thing in the world.
Well, in a later clip, he does say that Europe recognizes a non-market economy. So I don't know, or a market economy. Sorry. So I don't know. It's again more confusing information, and
and also we have to remember Melanie Joly not so long ago. It's very hard to actually find this clip, but she was reported at least as saying that she categorized China in a group of countries that she wanted to expand free trade with. So Canada wants to expand free trade with, I can't remember who she mentioned exactly, Europe, I think Asia, and she mentioned China. And it's not exactly like this is brand new. It's been on the table, this idea of a China-Canada free trade deal. It's not like, you can't gaslight the Americans into thinking that has just never been on the cards in any way. Like it has been around. It's been a conversation, and quite recently too. So, I mean, I don't want to defend necessarily the cheeky Americans, because they are being very cheeky here. But I think in response, Mark Carney is also being very cheeky, and so are his neophytes.
And then we have something from Vasika Pellis here, an interview with the food bank. And again, Canada facing, like, and I interviewed the executive director here in Kelowna on the food bank, it must be like almost a year ago now, seeing record usage. And then, you know, they react now with, you know, like some more crumbs for certain people. It's middle. It's 50% of Canadians. 50% of Canadians are $200 away from meeting their monthly obligations. So it's, you know, you sprinkle crumbs to the bottom, and then what does that say to the rest of Canadians that are struggling to put food on the table? People can't buy meat. We've talked about it how many times on this show? People looking in the grocery store that meat, like beef, is a luxury item. So again, crumbs, so you speak at the podium, and then so CBC and CTV can go out there and do their glossing it over, like how we're helping with food security. Again, more crumbs, and it doesn't help Canada. And right now in Canada, I was going to play this clip, but there's no point to it. 2.2 million visits a month, including 712,000 children. When I did that interview here in Kelowna with the executive director, they said the exact same thing. What they're shocked at is the amount of children that are being exposed to food insecurity here in Canada. In Canada, where's the pipeline? Again, more crumbs, no pipeline. That's where the real wealth lies in Canada, is in the pipeline. Industrial carbon tax. How many nations are not doing it again? Look, we look next door. Energy is everything. Still, nothing. And Pierre Poilievre pointing out the obvious, we've already said it, we have the worst food inflation in the G7. The industrial carbon tax adds to that food inflation.
Yeah, I'm sure
we'll
Pierre
talk
Poilievre,
about that.
Maybe it's in the next tweet where Pierre Poilievre talks about ending supply management, because that is a guaranteed way to make food cheaper in Canada. Absolutely guaranteed. You can read the studies yourself. Just type it into Google, type it in ChatGPT, whatever it is you use, end supply management studies, something like that, and just read and look. That would make food cheaper.
Well,
that would make fewer people in this country hungry. And Pierre Poilievre, the great Superman hero with his Y fronts on outside of his trousers, who is there to make food cheaper apparently and make life better in Canada, says what about it exactly? Other than nothing.
Agreed. And here's your favorite. You can do the best impersonation ever. We should just run him silent. You can just do the interpretation. But here's him telling you about how we have the best economy in the G7. Let's listen in, because he's at the same grocery store there. Let's listen in to Francois Philippe Champagne.
Affordability is top of mind for millions of young Canadians, millions of seniors, and families across our nation. I can assure you it's also top of mind for the Prime Minister, for this government, and I would say for all my colleagues. So today we are taking additional measures to support Canadians in times of need. For many families, the cost of living is a real challenge. Affordability doesn't exist in isolation. It is a global phenomenon felt across G7 nations. Affordability is closely tied to how our economy performs and how well it works for people across our great country. That's why with the Prime Minister, we are building the strongest economy in the G7. You have heard me say that many times before, but with Budget 2025, we are making generational investments in infrastructure, in housing, in productivity and innovation, because it affects how Canadians live, work, and plan for their future. Doubling overseas exports, as the Prime Minister have challenged us and our nation. Supercharging major project development, building one Canadian economy, and maintaining Canada's tax competitiveness all have a tangible impact on our standard of living. Taken together, these measures will enable more than $1 trillion.
I'm going to buy a dictionary and send it to him, because I don't know, like, what he's using words that make, he obviously has different definitions to them. Supercharging our economy, fast tracking projects. It's been almost a year now. Which one has been fast tracked? Which one has been supercharged? Which one? Because I'm waiting.
They also talk about these tax cuts as if like they've thrown vast sums of money at the population. It was Mark Carney made quite a funny error in his speech where he was talking about the He was talking about the tax cut, the middle class tax cut, and he said something like 22 Canadians got a tax cut last year. He obviously meant 22 million, but it was that kind of sums it up, really, doesn't it? All of this boosterism, and yet who's really benefiting? Who feels better? Who feels like life's more affordable now? Maybe 22 Canadians.
I mean, record food bank usage. I mean, we're going to show you the numbers. If this is the great, and again, they go to the old lie. This is a world problem. This is a world problem, and Canada is just one of the. No, it's not. Food inflation in the U.S. is less than half of this. I mean, we've shown you the comparisons. Food prices in the United States of America are way cheaper. Absolutely way cheaper. Way cheaper. Way cheaper. It's continually gaslighting. And which projects and this fast-tracked, supercharged things are done or moving forward? Which ones? Because I don't know. Like, I mean, just give us a list of those. And then as we hand out the crumbs, obviously, a lot of the speculation from the media that Mark Carney is going to call an election. I mean, that's when they ramped up the fear as well. And I mean, they ramped it up. CBC was just basically a TDS website all weekend, and I was checking it. It was just basically anti-Trump, anti-Trump. They ran every story they could on anti-Trump. We're going to show you some of the stuff that CTV ran too. Just absolutely atrocious. Where are the questions asking? Where are the questions asking about all the conflicts of interest that Mark Carney has? Where's the questions on the Freedom Convoy? Still media blackout on that decision. The appeal court came down. Nothing. Like here they have the chance to ask. You know, the appeal court upheld the decision that the Liberal Party violated the protesters' rights and freedoms. And you advised on it. Nothing. Nobody even thought to ask that question. Nobody there thought to ask that question. But they did ask this question here.
This feels like many days we spent on the campaign when I was covering the campaign. Lots of grocery stores, lots of affordability. So you're not considering a spring election?
I don't. You can't draw that conclusion at all.
Tell me that.
Well, of course we're not. We're not. We're focused on results for Canadians.
Of course we're not.
Hey, well, focus then. Focus on results. Focus on a pipeline. Focus on a pipeline. Like it's all just crumbs and just enough, and the media carrying the water. That's the thing. It's just absolutely atrocious. The media carries the water and just kind of like skirts all the other issues. They're a shield. CBC is a shield, a beard basically for the Liberals. They're a beard. They stop you even getting the questions in there. It's just absolutely atrocious there. You know, Nanos there saying that there's likely be an election too. I won't play that clip there because we basically have the same thing. There's no sense going through it. But here's the big question. I've seen this on the internet. Some people are starting to get this. When Mark Carney made that big speech in Davos, this is important. When Mark Carney made that big speech in Davos talking about a new world order and that the other world order has come to an end, what was he talking about really? Which world order has come to an end? Is it the WEF world order that's come to an end? Because that's the one that came crashing down around Mark Carney. Because they've moved away from climate extremism. They've moved away from all those things. Mark Carney led the Net Zero Alliance. That was the big thing that he headed that up. That was from COP26. He headed up that Net Zero Alliance. All the banks moved away from it, all because of the election. So they moved away from carbon capture. All those things have been moved away. That's Mark Carney built Brookfield around that. If you go look at Brookfield has massive investments in climate technologies, massive investments in Chinese real estate. Both of those in jeopardy right now. So whose world order is falling apart? Because let's listen into Christine Lagarde here and what she thinks of the speech there. Let's listen in.
So I want to start, if I could, with Madame Lagarde. And this is where I want to go with this, if I could, because I think we're all trying to figure out what we just saw. I think there was a lot of whiplash throughout the week. And we heard a couple of different perspectives, one of which came from the Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, who said, every day we're reminded that we live in an era of great power rivalry, that the rules-based order is fading, that the strong can do what they can and the weak must suffer what they must. Let me be direct, he said, we are in the midst of a rupture, not a transition. And I think we all want to understand whether you agree with that and what it means.
Thank you so much, Andrew, and good morning to all of you. I'm not exactly on the same page as Mark, and having 25 years of business background, I think that we policymakers are at a point where we have to look at Plan B or Plans B, but even with those Plans B, which have also been articulated by Ursula von der Leyen, I'm not sure that we should be talking about rupture. I think we should be talking about alternatives. We should be identifying much more so than we have probably in the past, the weaknesses, the sore points, the dependencies, the autonomy. But obviously, I take the view that from an economic and from a business point of view, we depend on each other. We have these very strong links and bind. Suppliers sometimes are in a position of strength. Demanders, if I look at supply and demands, have also a position of strength. And I think that all directions have to be explored. And my takeaway personally as a central bank president is that we have accountability to the truth. My economist often says, try to distinguish the signal from the noise. Well, I think we've had a lot of noise this week, and it's been a tremendously interesting and fascinating week from all perspectives. But our duty as central bankers, our duty as economists, is to distinguish the signals from the noise. And I would make one point, Andrew, if I may. We hear lots of numbers floating around. And I would just like to call your attention to the fact that numbers have to be defined, identified. When you hear, huge growth numbers, for instance, most of those numbers are nominal growth numbers. The real numbers are the real growth numbers. So when you hear 5% here, or 6%, or 7%, or 3%, in most instances, those are nominal numbers. You then have to take into account inflation and deflate those nominal numbers by the inflation. Then you get to the real numbers. This is one of the few things, I know it sounds a bit esoteric to the non-economists.
That's good. Well, if you did that with Canada, we'd be in the negatives.
Well, if you just also look at per capita, which is a lot more instructive than overall GDP. But she just gave me the impression there, like as she did that whole conference really, that she was almost like a hungover high school teacher or something, like just a know nothing, like a mediocrity. This woman who's ascended to the heights of the monetary system in Europe. Very strange. And she also said, she was like, as a central banker, and then she sort of went on to say, I disagree with Mark Carney's thesis. That's almost like, as a turkey, I'm not going to be voting for Christmas this year. And this is my reason. It's like, okay. She's at the pinnacle of one of these institutions that Mark Carney is kind of cast aspersions upon. Let's put it that way. So obviously she was a bit, unhappy about that.
We played a clip from her on Friday as well, talking about how they got it wrong in energy, what they did to their energy. And she said there was a lot of negativity about what European Union has done and what Canada's done. And there's big pushback on those agendas. And they've weakened Europe and the UK and Canada with their anti-energy policies. And now they realize that AI is everything and it requires energy. But Mark Carney still hasn't got that memo. So I think, when he made that speech, that New World Order, because again, if you go look at the Net Zero Alliance he built, everybody abandoned him. They abandoned him prior to him deciding he was going to run. It was in November 6th or 5th, which one? I think the 5th is the election day. Basically, the world shifted that moment. When Trump won the election, all the net zero climate stuff basically died. JP Morgan's, all those big banks all of a sudden decided, and included the Canadian banks. And when Mark Carney ran in his platform, he had said he was going to mandate the Canadian banks back into the Net Zero Alliance. That hasn't shown up because I don't think that there's any appetite for it. But we're waiting for this climate agenda to drop here in Canada as well. Michael Cooper put out that piece. We showed you that last week. Michael Cooper showing the ties between Brookfield and Pathways Alliance. There's so many ties in there. And so you have to question whose world order has collapsed. And that's the real question. And here's the Donald J. Trump here put out this tweet here too because of the auto dealers of Canada here. Let's listen to what the auto dealers have to say. The Canadian Vehicle Manufacturers CEO, this is what they said.
Hello, good morning. My name is Brian Kingston. I'm the president and CEO of the Canadian Vehicle Manufacturers Association. Canada's auto industry is under enormous pressure, with over 90% of Canadian production destined for the United States. There is no industry without U.S. access and North American integration. Diversification is not an option for automotive, as markets in Europe and Asia are better served by assembly plants in those regions. Canada's market alone is too small to justify large-scale manufacturing. The future of Canada's auto industry and the hundreds of thousands of jobs that it supports depends on securing our trade relationship with the United States. The federal government's decision to open the Canadian market to Chinese EVs is deeply concerning. The Canada-China strategic partnership has the potential to undermine Canada's auto sector and presents risk to the future of our integrated North American automotive supply chain. As the Premier has outlined, it is critical that the federal government rectifies this situation by taking immediate action to bolster the competitiveness of the very companies that have been building cars and employing Canadians for over 100 years. Step one is repealing the costly and redundant EV sales mandate. Under the new Canada-China strategic partnership, Chinese manufacturers that do not build cars in Canada or employ Canadians will receive up to $980 million per year in compliance credits. These compliance credits will be paid for by the very companies that operate here, taking money that could be reinvested in Canada, in Ontario, and sending it to China. Step two is taking action to make Canada more competitive for auto. We must urgently lower the cost of investing in plants, machinery, and R&D to give Canada an edge over other jurisdictions. The future of Canada's auto industry hangs in the balance. The actions that we take now will determine whether or not we have an industry for 100 more years.
I mean, I want to slap my head and go, dope. Because I mean, we've been saying this for how long there? Remember when the 6 CEOs the auto manufacturer went in the room with Chrystia Freeland? She was the transportation minister at the time, and she came out and says everything is great. The EV mandate sticks, and they came out of the room and said this EV mandate has to go. I mean, how many times we're going to say the same thing over and over again, and yet they will not let it go? And you've alluded to the fact that they need it for Quebec because the Stephen Guilbeaults and that would rebel. They already have rebelled too if they dump the EV mandate. And this will destroy the auto sector. We've said it time and time again. If they keep going ahead with this, Ford, GM, and all of them will pack it up and they will go home and they will not manufacture here in Canada. I mean, that much is painfully obvious. And it's 500,000 good paying jobs in Ontario, 500,000 good paying jobs in Ontario. And yet we seem to be, it seems to be such a high risk for 49,000 EVs, so it's got to be a lot more than 49,000 EVs. Like that deal, when they came back from China, they portrayed it as a big trade win. It wasn't about 49,000 EVs, was it? It was about a big trade win. Like, you know, they're going to start trade with China, our second biggest trading partner, and we're going to diversify our trade. And now all of a sudden they're walking it back and say, oh, no, it wasn't that. And the other interesting thing is Doug Ford meets with Mark Carney today as well. I think Mark Carney not going to Parliament. Okay. And he's going to meet with, so we're going to see how that turns out. Because either Doug Ford is going to stick up for the auto industry or the two of them are going to kind of like talk nonsense again.
Yeah, it was, that chap, despite looking like a 1980s Wall Street stockbroker, he did make some very good points, I think, like that you can't diversify the auto industry in Canada. It's just not realistic. Europe has its own behemoths, and they keep it sort of incontinent. Same with Asia. Very, very hard to go and sell cars to Asia from Canada. I mean, it's a little bit crazy, a little bit ambitious. So the market is the United States, and it's not Canada, is it? As well, it really is the United States. That's the market. So if you alienate that market, or if you lose that market, you lose the industry. It's pretty much as simple as that. There is no magic diversification that can occur. And if the Americans are going to, if the great plan is, let's have the Chinese come over and they'll build their cars here in Canada. If that's the idea, who are you going to sell them to? The only people we could sell them to are Canadians, because the Americans aren't going to accept them. So it's a very, and they might not only might they not accept them, they might then punish us in other ways and destroy the industry in other ways. So it's very difficult to wrap your head around. But I think obviously it's not really about cars, is it? It's about, as you were saying, it's about China and Canada. It's about the handshake with Xi Jinping.
Well, China
it's about this
hard.
idea that Canada has other options, and it's all part of the crazy negotiation that's going on between the US and Canada.
China pushing hard. I mean, we talked about it on Friday. China pushing hard. Let's get that deal signed. Let's get that deal signed. Let's get that, because they know that there's going to be pushback. And they're even pressuring today. You've seen it on Bloomberg all morning, how China's now saying, oh, we need to get this deal signed. We need to get this deal signed. They want to get the ink dry on the paper before there's massive pushback from the United States and from Canada itself, from the auto sector. Because, Canada can't afford to lose another major manufacturing industry in Canada. We've already suppressed our resource sector. In manufacturing, that would be just devastating. Here's the food professor put out this tweet here. Scott Bessent, he speaks fairly clearly. I do like when Scott Bessent speaks. He definitely is a lot more, I guess, calm than, Lutnick and the rest of them. Let's listen to what Scott Bessent has to say.
Some industry-specific tariffs on Chinese goods, and we have a highly integrated market with Canada, sometimes in autos, which he dropped the EV tariff, I believe, from 100% to 6%. Goods can cross the border during the manufacturing process 6 times, and we can't let Canada become an opening that the Chinese pour their cheap goods into the U.S. We have a USMCA agreement, but based on that, which is going to be renegotiated this summer, and I'm not sure what Prime Minister Carney is doing here, other than trying to virtue signal to his globalist friends at Davos. I don't think he's doing the best job for the Canadian people.
Rather catty. He says he speaks more clearly than the others. I think that is true, but he's become increasingly catty. He's been lashing out a bit lately. It sounds, I don't know, I think the Trump team probably recognized that he has more credibility with a lot of people, and they thought, all right, get out there and start delivering some attacks. I just wanted to go back to something you mentioned about Quebec and the EV mandate and all that. That is true. I firmly believe that that's true. But that Quebec kind of is the cause of a lot of this, because the Liberals need Quebec to have Canada. So they have to give Quebec certain things, like these environmental restrictions that they demand. But have a look at Quebec politics lately. Some very interesting things coming out, like the PQ, who are expected to win. They're way ahead in the polls right now. They've really softened their approach to natural resources, said they wouldn't necessarily be opposed to gas and oil pipelines. Then you've got the CAQ. You've got the current party that's in power saying, that they're going to hold off. They're going to delay their climate emissions targets. It's not as obvious as it might seem. Like the people of Quebec, they are an anomaly within Canada. They are a nation in that sense. They're so different from the rest of this country. But, they're still having to suffer with affordability or lack of affordability. And they're not stupid, obviously. They know that a lot of it comes down to these environmental policies. So, and we've seen other polls, haven't we, where a majority of people in Quebec are in favor of a new oil pipeline, even through Quebec, like an Energy East style one. So I think the ground is shifting, which makes me wonder why, in that case, Mark Carney and the Liberals, why aren't they moving with the ground and recognizing that actually they could just abolish the EV mandate? They probably could do it and get away with it. But I don't know, maybe there are some big wigs in the background that demand it, not just this idea that Quebec would flip. There might be donors, perhaps, or something like that, some powerful individuals in the background.
Which begs the question, what the reporters aren't asking, is all the conflicts of interest. Like if you just go read the last investor presentation from Brookfield and look at all their ties and look at all Mark Carney's ties to climate technologies. It's all in there. It's all tied into CCUS financializing climate agenda to financial instruments like Brookfield. A lot of its money is made through financial instruments that deal with climate technology. Like it's all in there, and the only people not moving away from it, it seems like Canada and Mark Carney. Whereas even Quebec, you're saying now is like, oh, we need to pause that, we need to pause that, we need to pause this. Europe is doing the same thing. The Americans have completely walked away from it, which means a lot of other people have. Japan, South Korea, and Germany did a deal with the Americans for LNG. They didn't ask for any CCUS. And then this is the thing, like how much. This is the question that should be asked. Why are we doing this? And then, when they gave $500 million to the European Space Agency, it has ties to Brookfield. Where was the ask there? Why are we giving that money to a company that has, a conflict with you? Like you actually make money off of this. And the Chinese thing, you actually took a loan from the President Xi himself, basically the Bank of China. And we're doing a deal with China. Like, where's the conflict of interest question asked? It's not being asked. And here's...
Because it's Mark Carney, that's why. As we've said this since the beginning. Since Mark Carney threw his hat in, we've said this. It's because it's him. If this was Pierre Poilievre or Andrew Scheer or even Jean Chrétien or whatever, if it was someone else, I think the attitude would be very different. Maybe even Teflon Trudeau. But it's because it's Mark Carney, and to a large group of people in this country, particularly in the media and the sort of elite class, Mark Carney can do no wrong. Mark Carney is basically some version of Gandalf. And if Mark Carney goes and does something like that, chucks $500 million at the European Space Agency that just happens to maybe benefit him, where all his assets are invested with Brookfield, then so be it. Gandalf has his reasons. It'll make sense in the end. He'll rescue us in the end. And what on earth you can do with people like that, I don't know. That's when somebody mentioned the word cult there. Yeah, kind of. It does almost approach cultishness when it's like that, because we see the same phenomenon with Trump, obviously, which these Carney people can recognize that when they see it with Donald Trump, but they can't recognize it in themselves, which is a little bit pitiable, I think.
Here's just something that you should notice as well. Mark Carney made that speech in Davos, and even a lot of Europeans said, whoa, that speech was basically sticking a stick right into the Americans' eyes. And basically all the liberals shut themselves off to media, even the corrupted and crippled media. Nothing on the plane, nothing from anybody. Nobody talks, right? Nobody talks. And they just, because there was a lot of blowback on it and nothing. And then all of a sudden they get back to that caucus there, and all of a sudden Mark Carney sends the minions out there so everybody can start with their talking points. And here's Anita Anand. So Anita Anand went out there, François-Philippe Champagne went out there, Mark Carney went out there, all with their scripted story, because can they not think, or what's the deal? But here's Anita Anand here now that she's allowed to speak here.
Canada and the U.S. have had and will hopefully continue to have a long-standing trade relationship. $3.3 billion of trade in goods and services pass through the Canada-U.S. border every day. In addition, the trip to China was very much about resolving trade frictions and settling some specific issues. There is not a discussion about a free trade agreement with China. That's not the purpose of the visit, and I'm sure that we'll continue to diversify our trade relationships across the board, recognizing the importance of the Canada-U.S. economic relationship, and at the same time not putting all of our eggs in one basket. Sure. China, India, Indonesia, the Gulf states, $71 billion UAE investment coming to Canada. Those are the types of trade diversification strategies.
That's good. It's a good thing we have video of the past remarks, right? Because then you can compare them and you just say they really are walking that back, and CBC and CTV carrying the water for them too as they try to walk this back now and say, whoa, we didn't say that, because they're getting pushback from the Automobile Dealers Association, from Doug Ford, from basically anybody that has a job that relies on trade, our biggest trading partner. And, it shocked a lot of the Europeans as well in what they said. But, they talked super tough there and said, like rupture and all these words that Mark Carney used there. I mean, it's going to go down as one of the, they're praising it. CBC and CTV praised that as one of the best speeches ever. But it's likely going to go down as one that had a really negative impact on Canadian lives.
We have to, we're going to have to review it in the long run, aren't we? And see what it achieved. It didn't achieve anything intellectually, Mark Carney may well be an intellectual heavyweight. I haven't seen evidence of that, but that speech was not an intellectual heavyweight speech. It was, it was actually quite sort of sophomoric, dare I say, very pretentious word. But it was the kind of thing that you'd expect to hear from an undergraduate and studying history or politics or something like that. It was also about 15 years out of date. It might have been interesting if he said that 15 years ago, but obviously he was saying precisely the opposite 15 years ago, wasn't he? Which is what makes it all the weirder and all the more cringy. But I just wanted to highlight something quickly there. She's talking about India, Indonesia, China, and all these countries that Canada's doing deals with. You have to remember that those countries, they're doing better than ever before, and they look good in many ways. Like the economic indicators are very good in a lot of those countries, but they are still poor countries. That includes India. Ultimately, there are many, many rich people in India, but overall, in aggregate, it's not really a rich country, and that means that people in India can't really buy your stuff. It's not like in America where the average person earns, what is a GDP per capita? It's like $80,000 a year or something like that. That's skewed a little bit by the rich people in America, but still, Americans, like the average American, can buy your stuff. That's not necessarily true in India. It's certainly not true in Indonesia. So the idea that we could, in any way, balance out like losing America, or even losing a little bit of America, like losing preferential access or the system that we have now, the idea we could balance that out with Indonesia and so on is, I'm sorry to say, a complete fantasy, which is why the number one priority, the number one issue right now in Canada is how do we calm things down with the Americans and guarantee that we can still sell them stuff? Because not many of the people are buying.
And I guess the other big question is who bought into globalism? Who in Canada, what Canadian citizens wanted to sign up for globalism? When did we want to be part of the globalists? And if you go look at I got a good piece on my LinkedIn there. Go look at it and talk about Brookfield. It's all about globalism. Brookfield is related on globalism. They've got it laid out in their investor presentation. Go read that. It's all about globalism. Globalism finance, globalism this, that, and everything. It's all about globalism. And in talking about globalism, this goes way back. And the big question there's Anita Nan sitting there with Rosemary Barton. Why didn't she ask? Mark Carney has ties to the Chinese government. Mark Carney borrowed from President Xi himself. He borrowed over almost $1/3 of $1 billion. He borrowed over $250 million from Xi himself on real estate that's failing in China. Is there conflicts of interest there? That should be a question. That should be an easy question. Carney was there himself as chair of Brookfield. He borrowed it. And this goes way back, and this is from when Obama was there. This is Chrystia Freeland when she was younger.
Should Obama be seeking to strike when he travels to China next month?
No, I think this would be the time, because you really need to bring China into the creation of a new world order, financial world order. So I think you need a new world order that China has to be part of the process of creating it, and they have to buy in, they have to own it. And I think this would be a more stable one where you would have a coordinated policies.
Given this continued weakness in the U.S. economy, are people right to start to be concerned about the dollar?
An orderly decline of the dollar is actually desirable. A decline in the value of the dollar is necessary in order to compensate for the fact that the US economy will remain rather weak. China will emerge as the motor replacing the US consumer. So there would be a slow decline in the value of the dollar, a managed decline.
That was 2009. You've got George Soros there, the mighty George Soros, saying things that, like, I would say a good few years before that, at least, people had come to see as just insane, just completely deluded. The idea that China was going to become like this responsible stakeholder in all these global institutions. And to quote him verbatim, China will emerge as the motor replacing the US consumer. How'd that work out, George? You know, and I'm not saying that I was around then and I got it all right or whatever, but many, many, many people did. People recognized that that was complete fantasy, completely stupid, fantastical nonsense. And sure enough, here we are in 2026, and George Soros was completely wrong, being interviewed by someone who has been completely wrong about everything.
And let's not forget, George Soros tried to tank the British pound as well when Mark Carney was the governor there with Brexit. And George Soros made a boatload of money off of that.
Well, he certainly made billions, didn't he? A huge amount in the 90s, I believe that was. Black Wednesday, they call it in England. Not the kindest deed. I mean, he doesn't have a great reputation in Britain for that reason. But the point that I wanted to make there, I guess, is like George Soros he's another one of these wizards. He's another one of these Gandalfs that a lot of people look at, and it's like, shush everybody, like a wizard is speaking. And like that's the caliber of insight that he was offering, that China was going to replace America as the main consumer base in the world. Just think about that for a second. How wrong? How could you be so wrong? It's just astonishing stuff. But you know, the Gandalfs live on. It doesn't seem to upset the Gandalf society, does it? When their members are like obviously wrong about things in very dramatic ways. And Mark Carney, the other Gandalf, wrong about everything. Just wrong, again and again and again and again. It's not hyperbole. I'm not exaggerating it. Nigel Farage was right when he said that. And yet here he is. His reputation has never been higher. He's never been doing better in his life. Christine Lagarde is another example. I just, it's a little bit depressing. Don't know how far down that road we want to go, but the Gandalfs that rule Middle-earth are not really, they're not particularly smart or insightful. They don't get things right.
The new world order that he's talking about there is falling apart is the globalism. And that's what's falling apart at the WEF. And Mark Carney was a foundation member of the WEF. Chrystia Freeland was listed as a director also on the WEF. And Klaus Schwab said that, and I always get this word wrong, Justin Trudeau was he was his proudest pupil as he penetrated the Liberal cabinet. Penetrated, I believe.
It's the most awkward word. Just in your head, if you're wondering what it is, just think, oh yeah, it's the really awkward one. I shouldn't have said.
China not doing great either. China's there's a story out there, and a lot of there's bits and pieces out there, but it sounds like China's top general accused of leaking countries' nuclear. This is from the New York Post, nuclear weapon codes, the CIA. So Xi is actually on the hunt for getting rid of some of the top military people in there. There's accusations of a coup and a whole bunch of things going on. This story is developing right now. So not the great time to be butting up with China as well.
No. Sorry, I was just distracted there by I assume Andre B3G is talking about me when he says English traitor. When have I ever said English troops didn't die in Afghanistan? Do people just come in here and just like literally make things up? Just complete fabrications.
Yeah, I think a lot of the people in the comments are saying that that person's just trying to instigate stuff there. Again, Charles, thank you very much, Charles. Again,
Charlie M. But no, sorry about this China thing about Xi Jinping. I mean, I said this last week, didn't I? We both did. Nobody really knows anything about China. Well, about the leadership, let's say, about the sort of the people that matter in the Communist Party. People know very, very, very little. Hence, when you'll read something like The Economist or Bloomberg, like Wall Street Journal, the most prestigious news outlets, you'll read them to try and learn about Xi Jinping, and they'll just recite like biographical information that's published by the CCP because they just don't know anything else. There just is no information. And then when something like this happens, it really hammers it home. Like, we just do not know how power works in the CCP. We just don't know, which is why one of the many reasons why it's very difficult to do business with them and why it's quite questionable to get close with them, because we don't know a damn thing about them. We really don't. I can't emphasize that enough. Even people who are like the world's foremost experts, like Frank Dakota, a professor who's like basically considered to be the world's #1 authority on modern China, he just freely admits it. Like, we just don't know. We don't know these things. So that's just something to underline. You would assume, wouldn't you, that we would have an idea about the world's second largest economy, second largest population, all the rest of it, who we're going to go and be quite good friends with, apparently. It's important to emphasize that it's all just question marks. It's all a mystery. And there are people now saying like quite serious people saying there is a not insignificant chance of a coup d'etat in Beijing now. I mean, who knows?
Well, Chrystia Freeland did resurface there in Davos. Rebel News got a scoop there. They probably got the story of the year so far, because all the government-funded media that we paid for to go to Davos there to enjoy Davos, couldn't seem to get an interview with Chrystia Freeland and ask all about the the potential conflicts of interest, her taking that job there, when she left, what the money trail is. Like, she was there advising Canada to give all that money to Ukraine. Now she's there in an unpaid role, which is odd that she's been there. She's there heavy pitching for Ukraine, and also in an unpaid part-time role. That seems odd that she'd be pitching that hard for Ukraine. But all that money that Canada has given, the billions and billions, the tens of billions of dollars that we've given to Ukraine, all with no oversight. No oversight. That's the problem. That's the problem. And Chrystia Freeland...
Well, there's no parliamentary oversight. Our dear MPs didn't do the work.
Our government-funded media didn't think to ask her any questions. It's just odd, isn't it? Just odd. She did do an interview with the Wall Street Journal, though. She did manage to they did find her, and she did an interview, basically, talking about how now's the time to invest in, I watched the interview, now's the time to invest in Ukraine. This is the best time. This is the best time to invest in Ukraine. Who's buying that? Who's buying that?
Probably me and you, the Canadian taxpayer. That's who's buying it.
That's who's paying for it, yeah. But I mean, here's some reality in Canada's economy that Francois-Philippe Champagne said it's the best economy in the G7. I can't do that impersonation like you can do, but
if you can do Kermit the Frog, you can do Champagne. You just have to chuck a Quebecois accent on top of it.
Let's listen to this on construction here in Ontario.
A scan of Toronto's skyline shows how much has changed after decades of growth. Now only one crane can be seen, a symptom of an unprecedented slowdown.
If current sales levels don't return to more historic ones, $20 billion will be taken out of the Ontario economy.
Recent research commissioned by the Building Industry and Land Development Association shows how severe the downturn is. In December of 2025, the number of new home sales was 240. That's down 24% from 2024 and a whopping 82% from the 10-year average. Lower interest rates and lower prices should be driving buyers into the market. But economic uncertainty over tariffs means it no longer makes financial sense for builders to start new projects. The impact for workers has already begun, with predictions of much worse to come.
We are seeing layoffs throughout the sector. A recent study that we did, if we don't return to more historic levels of sales activity and therefore construction activities, we could lose 100,000 jobs. Our sector in total employs 225,000 people directly and indirectly, so that would be a rather significant reduction.
Although all housing types are seeing a slowdown, it's the condo market in the GTA that has felt the brunt.
I've been sounding that alarm here in Kelowna for about a year. I said the cranes are coming down and they're not going back up. The cranes are coming down. That's what he said. The cranes are coming down. They're not going back up. It takes a while to get the construction projects back in the loop. Kelowna had the highest unemployment rate in Canada just recently. Again, construction related. These alarm bells are going off with the trade deal, the uncertainty that this trade deal, and what do they focus on? Sticking stick in the American eyes. I mean, this is the thing they should be then nobody should leave a room until they have a trade deal with the Americans. Nobody should leave a room until it's done. Nobody should leave a room until there's a pipeline deal done. Nobody should leave a room. But they're not doing those things. They're absolutely doing none of those things.
I would say the most generous interpretation of Mark Carney and his government, and I mean very, very generous, is that everything he's doing, all of these provocations, all of this jet setting around the world and everything, all the speeches, all the chit-chat, everything, that it's all just a long play based on getting the best deal with the Americans. I mean, I kind of secretly hope that is what's happening. This is just...
It doesn't make any sense.
Fully aware that they know where their bread's buttered. They know what matters. And they're just trying to throw out distractions, red herrings, and they're going off to places like Abu Dhabi and all the rest of it, and China, obviously, in the hope that they can freak out the Americans a little bit and that they can win.
I'll throw some sand in your face on that one. It's all those places they went to are all connected to Brookfield. Everything's connected to Brookfield, and all those trips. There's connections to Brookfield. And the Brookfield people are either there right before him or right after him. These things need to be asked in the government-funded media. We don't get access. They will not even answer emails to us. And the government media, they don't even give access there. The media literally flies on the plane with Mark Carney overseas. They fly on the plane with him. Why does nobody ask any questions? Look at Trump when he flies on the plane. He has press conferences on the plane. We have zero access. We have a government that refuses to be held accountable. There's so many questions in the conflicts of interest. The $1 billion loan for the Chinese ferries through the Canada Infrastructure Bank. All these questions are unanswered questions. Where's the pipeline? Where's the pipeline? Where's the pipeline?
But
Where's
also
the trade deal? Where's the trade deal? Over and over and over again. Trade deal, trade deal, trade deal.
Yeah, absolutely. But it was crazy last week, wasn't it? Where the President of the United States had said some pretty hefty things, some pretty serious things, including insulting and upsetting in a profound way the Canadian military and anybody involved with it. Well, anybody really in Canada, by casting doubt on the courage of Canadian soldiers in Afghanistan. And he just said, what did he say again? Like, that's a boring question. And then he said, ask a better question, so he walked away. Where was the media? Can you imagine if some very important country had insulted the Americans, the American soldiers or something like that, and insulted the war dead of the United States? Do you think Trump would just hide away for the weekend? And then on Monday, today, come out and say, and also not say very much, by the way, but say Canadian soldiers are very brave. That's basically what Mark Carney said today. Just things like that. It's very, very poor media, I think, for the modern age. But it seems intentional. They try to really control media access and media appearances. They want to make sure that everything is very, very sleek and sensible, and everything that they say, they want to say, and they've thought about it. They're trying to be very controlled in that way. And I think that might go back to day number one, if you remember. Day number one of the Carney government, when Anita Anand and the rest of the crew, Gregor Robertson, came out and were interviewed, and just all of them went off reservation. Every single one of them said something stupid. So maybe that's it.
It reminds me of the Hunger Games episode sometimes. It's just the rhetoric that they say that, you know, it's the best economy in the G7, you know, we're working on a super fast, super track. I don't even make up words. Mark Carney actually makes up words. He puts words together and makes up a new word. But here you're going again. New home sales in GTA fall to lowest level in 45 years. That's an alarm bell. That's an alarm bell. That's like ding, 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 right? Like there's fire trucks should be coming out. Nothing. Like drop interest rates. Do something. Stoke this economy. Do something. And they, you know, like it looks like right now, according to Polymarkets, we're not going to see a drop in interest rates in the next two decision times. So again, just the Canadian economy just stalled, basically like a sputtering 1950 DeSoto, just sputtering away. Well, they jet off in their Cadillac somewhere else. I don't know. It just doesn't make any sense here. And here's again, and I want to bring these contradictions to Canadian media versus and Canadian politicians versus American politicians. And here's Rebel News again. Ezra Levant bumps into one of the higher profile people for the Trump administration. Look at the difference in how he's treated with her versus Chrystia Freeland, Melanie Joly, and, you know, like some of the other Canadian officials. Just watch this, just for a couple seconds anyway.
How do you think the World Economic Forum is reacting to Trump? Because on the one hand,
we're all excited to have him here. Obviously, he'll be the star of the show.
Are they going to push back on Greenland?
Who's they? Europe?
Well, NATO. I mean, they sent one troop from the UK. That's terrifying.
So, as Secretary Besson said just this morning in an open press avail, no one wants a confrontation here, but I wonder why the same people getting upset that the U.S. has an interest in buying Greenland fairly and squarely aren't upset that China and Russia are already there.
You know, they want American money for Ukraine, but they don't want America to call the shots in Greenland. I don't know, maybe you have to be European to understand how to reconcile that.
Just, the point is, she's willing and civil to take the questions. Like most American politicians were willing to take the questions. Like, I mean, look at all the times that Trump's, when they go out on all the shows, even the ones they don't like, that, you know, are very aggressive with them, they go out and they take all the shows. Trump goes on media that does not like him. He takes questions, he'll stand there in press conferences. He'll take questions from almost anybody. Like he'll name some reporters from like different countries, Rwanda for whatever. And remember Ezra Levant there with Canadian politicians, they don't want to answer to anybody. They don't want to answer to anybody. And where was CBC? What was CBC doing the whole time there? Because I haven't seen anything come out of Davos. Have you? What were they doing there? Just were they at the buffet?
They reported breathlessly on Mark Carney's speech. That's dominated the headlines, hasn't it? And a little bit on Donald Trump's speech. But I would say about Kellyanne Conway, her and Ezra Levant are obviously somewhat simpatico, aren't they? Or at least more so than Levant and Justin Trudeau. So it's not a like-for-like comparison. But I would say your point is completely valid and correct, though, because even if it was, you know, if it was, I don't know, a CBC or something like that, if they'd ever had the gumption to go and walk around and try and interview Kellyanne Conway in Davos, I don't think they ever would. But in a fantastical world, imaginary world where they did things like that, she would still have done the same thing. It would have been a little bit more adversarial, I'm sure, but it would have happened and she would have spoken to them. And in that sense, yeah, it highlights, but we've had this conversation. I think it highlights a cultural difference. The Americans in general, and I reckon most Canadians would be willing to agree with me here and concede this. Americans in general, even just if you go down there on a holiday or something, they're in general a much more open people, aren't they? That's their culture. They're much more like willing to talk to strangers and things and open up, and they're a lot more chatty, and it's just completely part of what America is, you know? Whereas I think in Canada, there's a different culture, and obviously in other countries as well, where you there's more expectation of privacy.
But I guess if you believe, like as a politician, you're a servant of the people, and if you believe in the policies they're putting forward, you should be able to answer questions from a reporter. That should be the basic functions. Like, is it not frustrating for you that's worked for the Daily Mail and all that? You send how many emails, you won't even get a response. You finally get a response, they tell you to read the website or no. Like,
well, yeah,
they answer questions? Isn't that their basic function?
Yeah, absolutely. And it is a cultural thing though. It's like, it's not just politicians. It's also, I remember when I first started to do news in Canada and I called up the RCMP, and so different, so dramatically different, where it was like the cop that I was talking to was almost tearful at the because she was being asked questions, and I was like, I didn't want to, I didn't want to just wait, or I can't remember what it was, but I was just like saying, tell me about what's happened. You're the police, I'm the press, tell me. And it was like, that was an extreme faux pas. That was like a solecism on my part, and I didn't understand Canadian culture, I suppose. But yeah, it pervades all of Canadian society, and it makes journalism very, very difficult in this country, I think. And that's why so much of the news that we get, so much of the actual like insight into Canadian politics or society in general is anonymous sources in the Globe and Mail. So basically, when they have a phone call with one of their friends who works for the Globe and Mail or something like that, and then that person dutifully writes it up, and that's it. So it's completely on their terms. There is no open conversation with, like as you see with Trump, or as you see with a lot of Americans.
And then here's a piece with Vassie Capellas on CTV here. And she says some things that gets no pushback.
Americans are watching as President Trump chooses to kidnap and kill his own citizens as opposed to lowering prices. Canadians are watching that in horror and want our government to chart a new path and a new way forward.
What?
Yeah, she's completely sane, I would say.
No pushback. Just like, go ahead and say that and then put that on the website. I mean, that's what was on CBC all weekend. Just absolute TDS stuff, just absolute. And then they wonder why, like the best thing you can do is cleanse your mind, is don't go to CBC, don't go to CTV, just come to us. Help, share, subscribe, help us get it out there more.
And we'll show it to you.
Yeah, and we'll show it to you, and we'll actually tell you why it's I tell you why it's just like crazy. But here's CTV putting it out there. They kind of like, we've highlighted this stuff. We kind of laid out how they're going to do it. And here it is right now. They're laying it out there. They're just putting the groundwork in. CTV is laying the groundwork. Carney's 2026 travel plans in search of trade. So getting you used to him not coming to question period, that he's going to be busy traveling. And then the question should be, are any of these related to Brookfield? Are any of these related? Because Scott Bessent said it best. There is no such thing as a blind trust. And we know it's not a blind trust. We know the options. Michael Cooper's laying it. But all the stuff Michael Cooper's laid out, all the allegations in there, nothing. Just darkness.
Yeah, it's not even being picked up, is it? Not even in an attempt to kind of discredit Michael Cooper, which is what you might expect. It's like, oh yeah, let's get this guy on front page CBC. Let's discredit this argument. Instead, it's just like, didn't even happen. Never happened.
We had Rosemary Barton sitting down with Anita Nan. Did she ask about the Freedom Convoy decision? The appeal court upholding that the Liberals violated the Charter of Rights and Freedoms? You'd think that'd be a question. Like, how many days now? It's been like 8-9 days. Nothing. One of the biggest abuses, the use of the Emergencies Act. Nothing. Here's Francois Philippe Champagne telling you again how everything is great here.
Shouldn't you be a little stronger? Like Scott Bessent is talking about Alberta joining the U.S. Shouldn't you be telling him to lay off here?
Listen, one thing I've learned over time is that you don't need to comment on every single comment that are being made. One thing I would say is that we have signed an MOU with Alberta. Canadians are proud people. Canadians know how to build resources. Canadians know how to grow our economy. And I would say they will see that. Canada is taking steps with Alberta to do things differently, to grow our resources, to create growth in the country. And Canadians are very proud. We're a proud nation with proud values and a very strong economy. So I would say no, thanks, but no thanks. We will do our own things, and we will be able to develop our resources with Albertans, with Canadians. And that's something that will remind him next time I see him.
There you go. Everything is great.
He's the everything's great guy, isn't he, lately? I'm remembering when he came out that it was obviously something they decided in a meeting, where he just came out one day. I think it was in like November or something. He was like, "We're gonna be all right. We're gonna be okay," because like I think they realized that they'd pushed the kind of apocalypse line a little bit too vigorously. So then he's like he's the good cop, I guess, to the various bad cops.
So how come we're not building this great economy he's talking about? What are we waiting for?
Well, he said it is great. He said we got a very good economy. Why build anything if we've got a very good economy? No worries.
Here's one
Carney,
from Holly.
something we didn't actually mention, by the way, and I think this is the most important announcement that he made. But he said he's going to give like tax credits or expensing for greenhouse construction in an attempt to build more, greenhouses to produce food here in Canada. So we're sorted, mate. Who needs pipelines? We got greenhouses.
Okay. Here's one from Holly Dona Blacklocks. Warns of democratic decay. Well, we've been warning about it for a long time. We don't have a free and independent media here in Canada. We don't. I mean, there's guys like us. There's Juno, there's Rebel, there's True North, there's a few outlets out there, Sam Cooper, and I'm going to miss a bunch of people out there. But the government crippled and corrupted media are not doing the job they're supposed to do. They're taking $1.5 billion of your tax dollars, and they're not doing the work for Canadians. They're doing the work for the Liberal Party. But Canada witnessing a decline in democratic norms and the rule of law, says a law commission report. Findings were drawn from interviews with MPs, senators, judges, lawyers, and scholars. We're witnessing a general erosion of democratic norms, our economic system, and the rule of law. That's from the report. And that it says public institutions do not work unless they're reviewed and accountable. There's a thing. Public institutions don't work unless they're reviewed and accountable. And what have the Liberals been trying to do for the past decade? Block accountability, block transparency. How many records? Stephen Guilbeault, how is that paperwork coming? Are you done with the paperwork yet? I know the moose on the loose. I've seen this stuff for sure.
But it's also who's the best accountant and reviewer in a democratic system, and as evidence you can cite the last 300 years or something like that, or at least 200 years. Who does it best? The press, the free citizen, and it as expressed through the press, the people that do that sort of thing professionally. How's the press doing in this country? That in many ways, that tells you everything you need to know.
It's been intentionally crippled. Intentionally crippled. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why we've said this a million times. I mean, this is just pretty much confirming what we've said, isn't it? That the institutions have decayed, and faith in the institutions, faith in democracy has decayed because there is no real scrutiny. You need that. People need to know that it's like a fair game. Even kids won't play an unfair game. They'll just walk away. They won't bother. We're seeing a similar thing now in this country at large.
Mark Carney not disposing of all his assets in Brookfield and not being questioned by the media. How do you trust that? How do you trust that? I mean, I'd ask other accountants out there. I mean, how do you square this conflict of interest? How do you square this conflict of interest? You can excuse it we're under attack by Trump. How much of this under attack has been stoked by the Liberal Party just to win power? How much of it's been stoked and caused by the Liberal Party? That's the real question.
Well, there's the latest poll out by Liaison, I believe it is. The pollster puts the Liberals at 8 points. 8 points ahead of the Conservatives. And that comes on the back of increasing tensions with the Americans. As we've said before, realistically, people who aren't known for their ethics, they're not known for their moral fortitude. How could you possibly expect those people to resist that? They literally see it happen before their eyes. Trump says something nasty, we say something nasty back, poll goes up. How could you expect people like that? I mean, it's like trying to get a street dog to resist stealing a sausage roll, isn't it? It's not going to happen. You're not going to be able to persuade that dog to resist the scrap on the floor. And that's my perspective pretty much on the Liberals when it comes to that. Fights with the United States equal liberal power. I'm pretty sure that formula is settled in their minds now.
And the CBC, you can go to their website almost any time. It's basically a TDS website. They basically do the work of the Democratic Party in the United States. Federal employees suspended after declining a COVID vaccine has won back pay and $5,000 in damages. It's amazing how these court cases take this long. The Department of Public Safety employee was owed compensation for loss of dignity. The griever is entitled to damages of $5,000. That's under the Canadian Human Rights. And that's from the adjudicator. The $5,000 payment reflected the loss of dignity and self-worth. Matthew LeMay, a 15-year federal employee, unsuccessfully sought a religious exemption from the 2021 vaccine mandate. How many people lost their jobs? How many people were ostracized? I remember I'm speaking up on LinkedIn there, and people said I was a danger to society for telling people that they should have the right to choose. Imagine that, eh? Danger to society. You know what? Some of these things are just a thing to think about. If you think about the carbon tax, it's just a tax, right? You think about the vaccine too. Was it a tax? Because the government paid for it, so was taking your money, buying a vaccine tax? Do you know what I mean? Like all these things, are they not just forms of taxation? Mark Carney, all the stuff that they do here, we're going to collect money from you. We got to take more money from you so that we can give back some crumbs. Tax. Like if you just think of all these schemes. Tax, CCUS. We're giving away super credits to a couple of American companies right now for 75 cents on the dollar. What is that? They're going to take money from you and give it back to them. Tax. And who's getting the money? Private corporations. Who got the money for the vaccine? Pfizer. All those people got the money. You didn't get the money. You paid for it. And people thought it was a free vaccine. That's what they said. It was free. Was it free? Because I can tell you right now, Pfizer and Moderna weren't giving it out for free. They were reaching deep into your pockets for it. Taxation.
Quite.
And then this one here, Holly Doan's dug this out because this is a relevant story that's going on right now. RCMP in a secret 1981 memo feared Alberta Premier Peter Lougheed could lead the West out of Confederation in the Western separatist movement, because Western separatism at the time lacked a dynamic leader, but might succeed with a charismatic organizer like Lougheed. That's from the Mounties Counterterrorism Unit. An individual who was considered a potential leader was the Premier of Alberta, Peter Lougheed, said the memo. He had voiced disagreement with the separatist position and declared himself as Canadian first on numerous occasions. But this is all relevant now because of what's going on. What's going on in Alberta, what's going on in Quebec, and what's going on even in Saskatchewan right now. And Brian Lilly put this out. The PQ has a solid lead in Quebec polls now, and they're promising a separation referendum if elected. And Polymarket has it on there as well, that there'll be a separatist movement before the end of 2026.
He said that it's already begun. This chap here, the leader of the party, he said we're already in the campaign now. It's already begun, which I think is accurate. I think that's correct.
And then there's this. It's trending. Lots of young people. I noticed this all over on social media. So I'm just going to put it out because Kelowna was named in this, and supposedly there's a big nationwide protest against Mark Carney and Liberal government, and this is all over TikTok. And Kelowna is named one of the locations. Kelowna, Trail, Vancouver, Victoria, Calgary, Lethbridge, Regina. It's amazing that there's a lot of British Columbian places in there, and just a couple Alberta places in there.
Yeah, that's a little bit interesting. Few ways to read that, but one of them is that the sort of people who would usually protest have just given up on the idea of Confederation anyway, so they don't care. So they would much rather just protest in favor of leaving rather than protest to try and get a better deal within Canada.
But this is all over like TikTok for sure. This is the Department of Public Works last year logged 364 tips after launching fraud awareness campaigns involving federal contractors. Records show the department in a report to Commons Government Operations Committee said it also fired several employees. And this is where they want to cut. They want to cut this budget for whistleblowers. Remember, that's the area they want to cut. And they did punish some whistleblowers as well in the federal government. As a result of 364 tips were received via federal contracting fraud tip line. 84 employees were disciplined for misconduct. These measures range from oral reprimands to terminations. The department managed 9 investigations directly related to subcontractor overbilling. Remember, we talked about this too, like subcontractors overbill. What is that ArriveCan app? What is that, $64 million? And they're going to go back, and I think they're going to try and recover $187,000. The department conducted interviews and reviewed and analyzed hundreds of pages of documentation, including contracts, invoices, timesheets. As a result, 4 investigations directly related to overbilling were finalized in support for the restitution process provided to 3 previously closed files. And this is the stuff that they want to cut. They want to cut whistleblowing. They want to cut all this accountability. Look at all the pushback Jason Jacks gets on the stuff that he lays out there. We've covered that off so many times too, right?
Yeah.
And another one, we're not going to play the clip here, but there's, what's his name, Stephen McKinnon there is saying that, like the Liberal government is coming back and they're going to dole out tons and tons and tons of programs here. We have lots of legislation to introduce in today's opening parliament for 2026. And we believe we have a strong mandate from the Canadian people. And we're going to continue pursuing that mandate. We have lots of legislation, lots of initiatives, lots of things to propose to Canadians. And, well, maybe we'll play it because it says they did ask him, but are you looking to have a majority? Let's play it from Steve McKinnon here.
Well, we have a lot to get done. We have, of course, a number of pieces of legislation from before Christmas, and we will have a very aggressive series of introductions of bills over the course of this session, dealing with crime, measures dealing with affordability, measures dealing with our external trade relationships. Canadians can expect a very vigorous and healthy amount of proposals in the coming weeks.
Do you know how many pieces of legislation you're going to put forward?
Well, they're always, of course, subject to getting through the cabinet process, but there will be a significant number.
Anyway, didn't ask about conflicts of interest. Was Steve McKinnon just tossing sausage rolls at Rosie? Don't ask that question. Don't ask that question. Don't ask that question. Basically, just come on here. Isn't it amazing how like they went radio silence again, all radio silence after Mark Carney's speech there for a few days, and then all of a sudden, Mark Carney was asked there when he was walking to his car, he wouldn't answer because he said ask better questions, and then all of a sudden, all the talking heads show up and they're all there, pitching these lines here and basically not being questioned on any conflicts of interest and all that kind of stuff. It's basically just
not answering questions as well. That's just pure contempt. That isn't it? The way he answered that question.
Just might as well be sponsored content.
It's dreadful, and he is. I mean, he's kind of terrible for it, I must say. So he was at we've got the text here in front of us. Are you interested in having a majority in 2026? That's a very simple question, isn't it? His response: we will continue in the spirit and the letter of what Canadians have given us as a mandate. All the measures we will propose in this session will reflect the mandate that has been conferred upon us. What are you talking about? You sound like a 16-year-old with a thesaurus that doesn't quite understand how to use the words that he's putting in his sentences. It's just, none of that makes any sense. Just answer the bloody question. You know what I mean? If we go back in our memory to that, the other Blacklock story there about a loss of faith in institutions and all the rest of it. Do you think that might have something to do with it? That kind of response. That is an attempt, a deliberate attempt to be not be intelligible, basically, isn't it? So that he is not understood. So that he can just open his mouth, sounds can come out, but it doesn't mean anything. That's the objective there. And I just see that as contemptuous.
I'm just gonna. This is a Conservative MP up there at the Giant Mine Remediation Project. I'm just gonna play a small clip there in Yellowknife.
Hey everybody, it's Bob Zimmer on a cold day in Yellowknife in front of the Giant Mine Oversight Board office. We're here in town having some meetings around the growing budget of the Giant Mine Remediation Project. The project was originally supposed to cost $1 billion, and that's a lot of taxpayer money. $202 million is going to consultants alone, with no end in sight. It's going to cost $4.4 billion and up. We're seeing that the locals aren't necessarily getting hired for the project, and local Indigenous people are underrepresented in the workforce on the Giant Mine site. We're going to keep investigating the Giant Mine remediation project. Stay tuned.
Consultants make out like bandits in Canada, especially off the taxpayer dole. That's another thing that Brookfield has made billions of dollars off Canada's government. Billions of dollars. Isn't that amazing?
It's amazing for some people.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. Just absolutely amazing. We're going to switch our focus a little bit here. Gold and silver, absolutely on fire. Absolutely on fire. Gold and silver, we've been talking about it for a long time, and breaking out into new highs again today. Gold up over $5,000 an ounce right now at 5,067 United States money, and almost 7,000 Canadian right now. Like it's absolutely like 6,955 in Canadian dollars. Like I never thought I'd see that day, but here it is. And silver, I've had my buddy owns a couple of silver projects here in British Columbia, and silver today up $9 at 112.46 in US dollars, and like 150 Canadian. And but still, where's the fast tracking for exploration, fast tracking for this? It takes like 20 years to get a mine going. Again, where are we hearing that? Like, what's going on? Like, what is going on? What is going on?
But also, Carney, that's another question Carney's not been asked, to my knowledge. He's never been asked a question about this crazy run for gold and silver. I mean, you would think somebody that was a central banker would have maybe some insight into that. It suggests a serious decline in confidence in traditional assets, like currencies. It's something maybe that you should talk about, but who cares?
Who does care? Who does care? But here's a Canadian company, American Eagle, that I followed for quite a while. The next chart there, American Eagle, is a copper gold discovery there in BC. But where's the fast track? And we saw it's the next chart. Did you not have it? No, maybe not. Nope. Next. Oh, scrambling. See if you can get it up there. American Eagle, copper gold discovery up there in BC. But why not fast track this thing? Like Teck's invested in this thing, a whole bunch of other things invested in it, and I've been following it for 3 years. In disclosure, I have invested in American Eagle. I used to be a mine site controller. Follow this sector very closely. But any luck? Says it's glitchy. Again, we don't have that budget that the CBC has, $1.55 billion to play with, where they were all there off in Davos there eating sausage rolls. Nobody found the time to interview Chrystia Freeland. Justin Trudeau was there as well. Nobody thought, hey, we should just get an interview with Justin and Katy Perry. Nobody thought to maybe ask a question. Nobody got even reaction on Mark Carney's speech from some of the other leaders out there. Nothing, just nothing. So you'd have to wonder, like if we did a cost analysis on what they got out of that, like what CBC delivered from Davos, and any luck? Sounds like a lot of scrambling. No? Well, we don't have a few minutes. We're going to move on to BC here because there you go. Can we play this clip here from Mark Carney on... do you have that? In the BC sector? This one here? Yeah? Let's play that.
Canadians are inclusive. We know our country is stronger when everyone belongs, when newcomers are welcome, when minorities are protected, when Indigenous peoples are true partners. That commitment to inclusion was institutionalized, first in the Bill of Rights and then embedded in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. It was manifest in our adoption of multiculturalism, first as policy and then as law. In the same spirit, the enshrinement into law of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples reflects our fundamental commitment to reconciliation and to respecting Indigenous peoples as equal partners in building our country together. And inclusion means going beyond the protection of rights to the commitment to creating a society in which everyone can flourish. That's why we introduced the Combating Hate Act, to preserve the freedom of people to practice their faith and culture without intimidation, harassment, or violence.
Well, in BC, lots of real estate deals not moving forward, financing, people having a tough time financing projects. The BC government, NDP, said that they're going to backstop $150 million worth of mortgages. And it's, like some people estimating that should be up to $1 billion. And I've talked to a lawyer here that has 33 years in Aboriginal law, and it's in the trillions, he said. So, again, uncertainty. That's capital needs certainty, and the Liberals and the NDP are failing miserably at providing certainty to capital, and that's reflecting in the numbers. Even though you can stand up there, Francois Philippe Champagne, and says that we have the biggest, the fastest growing economy, and use words like supercharged and all this other stuff. Catalyze. Got to use the word catalyze. We've catalyzed more debt, and we catalyzed more taxes than anybody before. Never seen any taxes like that.
This was the part of the speech, or one of the parts of the speech, that I found so strange, this one that he made in Quebec, because it was kind of the promise of the Carney doctrine, if we can call it that. I mean, I think that's glorifying it a little bit. But the promise was that he would drop the Trudeau lectures, the sermons, that they would stop. And then he seems to have just picked up one of Justin Trudeau's old speeches that was lying around in Ottawa. It's like, all right, this is what I'll say. And that, I think, was certainly a bit of a surprise to me, because that's the first time he's really indulged in that kind of, wokery, I suppose people would call it, but certainly the language of progressivism and the language of Justin Trudeau. That was his first real, serious indulgence in it. I know people often mention, and no doubt somebody will mention it, that he said Muslim values are Canadian values. He said a couple of things like that, hasn't he, which were kind of Trudeauian. But in general, he's kept the lid on it, and that seemed to be the offer. That was the Carney offering. So it's interesting, I think, that he really he opened up Pandora's box there, didn't he? Trudeau's box. And he just started coming out with all the magic words of the Trudeau era. So interesting. Maybe an indication that we could see a bit more of that if we're going to have another election.
I just saw it drop there. Now the Northwest Territories says they're not going to administer the federal gun buyback program. So how many is that now? Is that most of Canada other than Quebec? How many are not?
It should have been that anyway. It should have just been a Quebec law, obviously. I mean, they're the only ones that really want, aren't they?
That's $750 million. That's basically a tax as well, right? $750 million. $50 million has already been spent, probably more now. And they've got a total of 16 guns. And they've got a guy running it that would probably have a tough time figuring out how to start a car, especially an EV. What do I know, though? We got some international news for you.
Coming to you live from the Now Media Newsroom.
Look at that. Somebody just donated some sausage rolls, and you got that big one there. 20 sausage rolls for both of us. Well, 20 in probably the United States, probably 5 here in Canada, right?
Yeah, I saw one for $3.
Did you?
In the grocery store at the weekend, so that would get us a few.
But we do appreciate that, Global Traveler. Absolutely appreciate that.
Also appreciate his insight when Global Traveler writes about energy and oil and things from time to time. Quite insightful.
If you could share your first name every now and then when you do stuff like that, that'd be appreciated with all these names out there, Global Traveler. That'd be, so that we can call you something other than that. If you don't, you don't. But appreciated. Joe loves a sausage roll as well. He nailed it there. Sausage rolls for everybody. Everybody gets a sausage roll. Everybody gets a sausage roll.
We need a sausage roll gun so we can shoot it into the crowd.
We're gonna have a landing page up pretty quick here so that we can share some stuff and some merch too. Sausage roll merch, all that kind of stuff. Again, we do appreciate everybody that comes here every day and listens to us. I know it's a long news show, but if we just imagine if we could get on and replace Rosie and David Cochrane, what a different Canada we would have. What a different Canada we would have. I don't know if they would
like get their buckets of sausage rolls. We would share them with the people.
I think what we would put a bucket on the table there for Steve McKinnon and say, have a sausage roll. Now you're going to answer some questions, buddy. There you go. Somebody wasn't very nice there. We got, it looks like
Heidi, thank you. Heidi's just come in and dropped a big one, a big sausage roll fund.
Wow. Iran seems to be heating up. The Americans have their Navy parked off the coastline there, and a lot of stuff going on there. We got a little clip here to play. If it's got music, you can kill the music, but let's play this little clip here. I don't think that's music, but I don't know. What's that? Yeah, you don't have to play that. Anyway, there's lots going on there. A lot of people, like I've seen lots of videos there, people begging the Americans to intervene. Now they're, the death toll in there, they're saying it's getting a lot bigger there. And then it says that the U.S. Air Force is there. And it sounds like Jordan and the UK are participating as well. I've seen some stuff on there that the UK is actually helping with this as well. But
well, the Carrier Strike Group is on campus, isn't it? About now. So if something's gonna go down, you'd expect it'd be pretty imminent.
But it sounds like I said, that there's been some clearances from the Middle East as well, and from different countries, and the UK seems to be. I mean, the UK is lots of times tightly intertwined with the Americans, isn't it? I think they were involved in the Iran bombing as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, interesting. I mean, again, you can go watch the videos of the pleas for America, because I mean that's the only people that can probably help them. Like who else is going to help? Who else has a military? Canada continues.
I mean, it's always the question of what happens the day after, though, isn't it? And with Venezuela, it's become increasingly obvious now that they had Delcy Rodriguez lined up. I think it's a Wall Street Journal or some American paper has spoken to people in the administration saying that a deal was in place, and Rodriguez was kind of groomed, and she was aware that that it was going to go down.
Well,
Maduro
they
was
said
going to be
inside
captured.
people.
I don't know if there's that in Iran, really, because you have this whole group of nutcases, like real true believers, sort of Shia Muslim extremists, for whom this regime functions. Really, it's in their interest. They're not going to be delighted if the system is dismantled. So let's wait and see.
Anyway, Mark Rutter there says 2 work streams have been agreed on Greenland and the Arctic security. We won't play the clip here just because we're a little long in the tooth, but he says that there's one with NATO for Greenland, and then one with the Americans and the Danes and Greenland. That's being worked on, 2 different streams there. So we'll see when those actually are done. You know what I mean? Because otherwise it's just a lot of speculation. Minneapolis is basically like it's turned into a war zone there after that latest shooting. Like tensions are super high there. I think now they have National Guard on site as well. But we're not going to show you this clip here, but there's tons of clips out there if you want to go watch any of these. But lots of accusations on both sides, and definitely something.
Well, the chances on Minneapolis, it's becoming a habit for the people of Minneapolis, isn't it, to kind of be the setting for these huge events in American contemporary affairs. Like that's obviously where the George Floyd incident occurred, isn't it? And that was
same guy in charge too at that time.
What's that, sorry?
Tim Wall, same guy in charge.
Timbo, yeah, but it's there's obviously something very interesting about Minneapolis. Like when histories are written of this era in the future, there's obviously going to have to be a chapter called Minneapolis, isn't it? Which is strange because it's not. I mean, sorry to the people of Minneapolis, all those millions of Minneapolis people listening to this, but I mean, it's not that important a city, is it really in America? It's like second tier, maybe at best. And yeah, it's been at the center of things in America, hasn't it, for the last 5 years or so? 6
and
years.
then the Japanese prime minister, who's just called an election, Takaichi, is gifting 250 cherry trees to Washington, D.C. Beautiful cherry trees in Tokyo, and that beautiful, absolutely.
Should
And
give
her
them redwoods in return, because redwoods are very beautiful as well, and that's a nice American tree.
And her approval rating at 70%. She talks tough too. She's what the CTV and CBC they would label her a far right extremist or far right party.
They just have no idea how to react with the Japanese, do they? Because they have their own civilization, their own culture, obviously their own language, their own way of doing things. And I feel like it's beyond the ken of those sorts of people, so they don't even want to. It's like, bugger this. Whereas something like Hungary, a country like Hungary, which is, gets a lot of attention, doesn't it, for its immigration policies and because of its leadership. But because the Hungarians are Europeans, it's like, game on, let's do it. But with Japan, I just feel like a lot of the time, those same people are just scratching their heads about Japan. They don't understand Japan. They don't know what they can say. They don't know what they can get away with. So they just leave it.
Lara. Yeah, I was just there, and I think everybody knows it, watches this on a regular basis. I was there for 10 days in Tokyo and Osaka. Absolutely beautiful, no homelessness, no drug addiction, and I walked around at 3 a.m. every morning. Basically, I went for my a 2-hour walk, and in different places, and felt 100% safe. And I just interviewed the mayor and 2 councillors here in Kelowna, and I shared that with them, and I said I would not do that here in Kelowna. Would not do that here in Kelowna. And I said, it's done other places. It can be done here. And then, I think Gordon Lovegrove said, yeah, I've been to a couple other countries where it's there, and they stand up there like, I think Francois Philippe Champagne, like, it's like this in every country. No, it's not. It's not. It's not. It's not like this. And
it doesn't have to be, which is what the logical conclusion to that is. It doesn't have to be. It's a choice.
Here's your friend, Viktor Orban. Let's listen to what Viktor Orban has to say.
My friend.
Prime Minister should shut up always, It's not written anywhere. So I am here to represent the national interest of Hungary. And on that basis, I would like to make deals, agreements, compromises, whatever, with the other country leaders who represent their own national interest. So I don't represent the globalist elite here, or the European bureaucrat, or somebody who is just, swimming on the sky. No, it's not my job. I'm standing firmly on the basis of the national interest. And I would like to make deal, compromise, agreements with the others who represent also their national interest, because Hungary first. You are from Germany. I suppose for you, Germany is the first. That's right. So let's sit down and understand what is good for the.
The European Union's Doug Ford.
Well, it's interesting that he's saying that with literally the European Union's flag behind him. Yeah. Because the European Union, that is just like, you might as well pour acid in their ears. That to them is the antithesis of what leading a country is about, because they don't really recognize countries. They recognize the union. You're supposed to subordinate national interests in the interests of the greater union, of the continent, of the bloc. That's what you're supposed to do if you want to be a good EU leader. And he obviously takes a completely different view.
We're going to leave you with our last story here. We're going to leave you with Bill Maher dropping some truth bombs as well. Bill Maher, a known liberal, Democrat, or whatever you want to call him. But he's also said they've lost their minds. And I would agree with that. Let's listen to Bill Maher here.
The mayor stands by, and I assume stands with, someone who says things like, if you don't believe in the government's sacred right to seize private property, it's over. Seize private property. Home ownership is racist. Elect more communists. Private property, especially home ownership, is a weapon of white supremacy. Really? Even among the 20 million black Americans who own their own home? I mean, these are the kind of utterances I might forgive as something a dumb white girl said while she was at Bryn Mawr. Because it's the kind of privilege hating you can only learn for $95,000 a year. But these are statements made as an adult. Yes, for co-eds from elite private colleges, you're only a lesbian until graduation, but the communism lasts a lifetime. Democrats seem to be having this.
That's good. There you go. Sounds like BC, where home ownership may not be that.
But he's just pointing out that, you know, there are a large amount of extremists in positions of power and authority in the United States. And it very much is not the case that they're all on the right, which is what you would assume if you only read the CBC or something like that. Then quite a large number of them are on the left. And it is, I mean, you mentioned that he's some kind of a liberal or something. God knows what he really is. But it's a little bit ironic because he has said such extravagantly, extraordinarily stupid things in his time, where he's talked along racial lines and things like that, just said absolutely outrageous things. I mean, about white people, the unfashionable race that we should all condemn. But, you know, he's contributed to this madness. And then here he is in his show, and he's like, and I mean recently, like last year. And then here he is on his show saying, like, cherry picking, not cherry picking, but like quoting bits of, you know, what this woman has said, who's now been given a position of authority in New York City. It's kind of like, yeah, you did that too.
Well, that's our show. That's our show for today. We're back tomorrow at 9 a.m. Like every weekday, we're here. Every weekday, 9 a.m. It's about, we try to be about an hour and a half to 2 hours, 2 hours on the nose today. And like, share, subscribe. We really appreciate that. And those that can contribute, that's awesome as well. Support independent journalism. And make sure you tell your MPs to do interviews with the Really Big Show as well, because that's what we're trying to do. Andrea, our producer, is out there trying to get interviews all the time. I did three on, I think it's Thursday or Friday. I think Thursday I did 3 interviews. I mean, more than willing to do all these interviews. Ian and I have done some big interviews as well. We'd like to interview more and more people. Liberals is tough ones to get. We have had a few liberals in the past, and we have interviewed the Premier of British Columbia, Eby, and the finance minister as well, but of BC. We'd love to get Chrystia Friedland. Chrystia, and we know you're a big fan of the show. Why don't you come on and explain why you took that job in Ukraine and why you're working for free? We'd love to hear it. And Justin, we'll even give you a free pair of socks if you come on this show as a party.
Sausage rolls?
Sausage rolls, yeah, and a bucket of sausage rolls for you, Justin. But with that said, we appreciate you and everyone. And thank you for watching Now Media.